Exciting. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Danny Sauter. I've lived in District 3 for the past 10 years with my wife. And over those last 10 years, at every turn, I've looked for ways to serve our community. That started as serving as the president of North Beach Neighbors, where I've done everything from lead the effort to start the North Beach Farmers Market, work on legislation to fill up our empty storefronts, organize monthly street cleanups, and start a free restaurant delivery to support our restaurants during the pandemic. I know that public safety is on all of our minds tonight. That's why I've worked to organize town halls with our district attorney, police walks with our captain at Central Station. I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by the San Francisco Democratic Party. I'm also proud to have support from organizations including the Sierra Club, the Chinese American Democratic Club, and more than 60 other community organizations, community leaders, and labor unions. And I look forward to our conversation tonight. Thanks. I think there is too much toxicity in San Francisco politics. We need to turn down the temperature and actually focus on results for our neighborhoods instead of so much fighting. District 3 will be my first priority, of course, but there's so much work that we need to do that involves collaborating with other districts. Let's take, for example, an example that is so close to us this evening. Finishing the Central Subway, making sure it gets to North Beach and to Fisherman's Wharf. That is a project that goes from District 3 to District 6 to District 10. It's going to take relationships with other folks, not only in the Board of Supervisors to do that, but certainly in a case like this, people, leaders from our state level and from our federal level. That's the sort of leadership that I bring to this office as a 10-year community organizer in these neighborhoods, someone who's been focused on results, not focused on the politics and the fighting. There's too much of that. There's already enough of that. Public transportation is one of our most effective responses to our climate crisis. 45% of our emissions in San Francisco come from private vehicles. So we do need to make it a lot more attractive to get around our city without a car. I touched on a really ambitious project to do just that, extending the Central Subway. That's going to take time, but it is a project that this community deserves. In the meantime, how we can do it more quickly and how we can do it more cost effectively is expanding things like our rapid bus lanes. We have a project on Van Ness that of course took too long. It was of course too expensive, but it gives a sense, a glimmer of what could be if we have more rapid bus lanes throughout San Francisco. That project, the mistakes aside, is now working fantastic. It has increased ridership on that route by 40%, and the reason being is that that line is now 40% faster. We know, we've seen on every single line, both in San Francisco and around the world, when we make buses faster, more people take them, and it creates more complete communities. That would be my focus. District 3 is already the densest part of San Francisco, but that doesn't absolve us from doing more. And in our District 3 neighborhoods, we know that character and density can go hand in hand. In fact, I think they thrive with one another. We see that in our neighborhoods of District 3. And the good news is we have plenty of space to do it. It's not going to take high-rises. It's going to take filling empty parking lots. It's going to take buildings like 659 Union behind us, buildings like Lombardi Sports, buildings like the Tower Annex record site at Bay and Columbus. It's going to take the retail vacancies, some of the largest retail vacancies in all of San Francisco, down at the wharf that can be housing, in our empty downtown office buildings. That all can be housing. And you asked specifically about family units. We need more 2, 3, 4 bedrooms in District 3. The cost of living is too high, but also even if you have the means, so many families have to move out of this district because there's not the space. I'll introduce a family and senior special use district which says you can have additional density if you give us more homes that are priorities for seniors and families in our district. Keeping people housed is a very smart investment. It sometimes takes just hundreds of dollars to keep someone in their home rather than tens of thousands of dollars once they're out on the street to try to bring them back in shelter. So these are really smart investments. I will support everything from emergency rental vouchers to fully funding our tenant lawyers. A number of years ago, our city passed Prop F to fund tenant lawyers, but it's never been fully funded. There's more that needs to be done there. And so important in District 3 is just steps from where we are in Chinatown, where we have so many families, so many seniors living in SROs. and many of those individuals are in SROs without master leases. That is incredibly important to make sure that we're supporting organizations like our SRO collaboratives, who actually have relationships with those seniors, with those families in SROs, supporting them, making sure that they have a fair shot against their landlords. That's the work I want to do, and I say that as someone who's a 10-year tenant of District 3 and endorsed by the California Democratic Renters Council. We should not criminalize homelessness. I think we've seen in recent weeks that with things like sweeps, that as things get better in one neighborhood, be it the Tenderloin, they get worse in another neighborhood like Lower Nob Hill, which is a neighborhood and a part of District 3 that is so often forgotten about. We need to do the hard work to actually invest in the foundational pieces that get people out of homelessness. That includes getting them into shelter. We need more shelter beds. We need more shelter of all types. We do not have a right to shelter law in San Francisco, but there are other cities that have 80, 90% of their individuals who are homeless actually in shelter. We need to step forwards towards that. We also need to lower barriers to recovery. We know that there is so much of a drug crisis. It's not the same as our homelessness crisis, but they're related. We need to make sure that we lower barriers to treatment. There are too many barriers this moment. Many of these centers are still working banking hours, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. We need to lower those barriers. Two things that I'll prioritize. First is commission reform. We have more than 150 commissions in our city. We have thousands of city commissioners. There are a lot of individuals there who are doing incredible work, but there's also individuals there who are unelected, who are making really important decisions, and that's been part of why we've seen corruption. We've seen it in commissions, but most importantly, something that I do support is a prop on this fall's ballot put on by our Supervisor Peskin, the Inspector General measure. This is something that most other cities have, which is an independent office to actually be tasked full-time with rooting out corruptions, giving protections to whistleblowers, and actually being a force in City Hall, having an independent budget in City Hall to look out for corruption, to be able to actually act independently and stop corruptions. Most other major U.S. cities have it. We don't, and we've seen the result of that. That's why I'm supporting an Inspector General, and I hope all of you will as well. Last year, the San Francisco Reparations Task Force put out this study, which put forward hundreds of recommendations to be a step towards reparations. And so, although one or two of them got the headlines as it relates to payments, there are hundreds more in that report, which I'd encourage you to review. I think for me, this was a reminder, and I hope for all of us, this is a reminder that San Francisco is not immune from mistakes. It's not immune from an ugly past in moments, particularly around redevelopment in the Fillmore. We have taken some steps forward to correct that. As you look at things like our certificate of preference to give priority to families and descendants of those displaced in our affordable housing lottery, but we have to do more. We have to do more as it relates to workforce development. And I see this study, I see this task force as a way to have that conversation. There are some of these that we can implement quite quickly. There are others that, frankly, we just won't be able to implement. But this is a promise to our communities of color, particularly our Black community, which has been decimated over decades in San Francisco. We need someone who understands all of our District 3 neighborhoods, and that's why I feel so strongly that you deserve someone who's been working in these neighborhoods for the past decade. I think you deserve more than someone who only shows up when it's an election year or someone who moves into our district just to run for office. Now, our neighborhoods in District 3 are all incredible. They all need different things. Along Polk Street, we need to fill up our empty storefronts. I've been active in doing that here in North Beach. I'll do that along Polk Street as well. Lower Nob Hill, one of our densest parts of San Francisco, is without any true open space. I'll work to create a mini park in Lower Nob Hill. Russian Hill has 3 mini parks, Lower Nob Hill deserves at least one. And as we go back to Polk Street, which goes everywhere from Russian Hill to Nob Hill to Lower Nob Hill, that is a part of our district, particularly along our commercial corridors, that deserves more support from our police department. It deserves footbeat officers, which it hasn't had in 10 years, and it deserves to be included in Central Station. Central Station cuts off at Larkin. It needs to be expanded fully to match the district boundaries at Van Ness. So I supported the residential vacancy tax the other year because I think we've got to do everything possible to get our vacant units back online. We also have to do everything possible to get our many tens of thousands of proposed and approved units actually built. But we have to confront the fact that in San Francisco, it takes 87 permits to build one new unit of housing. We are the longest timeline to approve housing anywhere in the country. In fact, the White House just called us out for that in a special report. That's the work that we need to do. I also think, as was touched on as it relates to landlords, the city does need to treat the big mega landlords, the million-dollar corporations, different than the small property owners. I certainly want them treating the big mega million and billion-dollar companies differently than my landlord, who's an incredible 85-year-old Italian guy who happens to live next door. Well, thanks, everyone. Tonight, I think you heard a lot of ideas, but you deserve more than ideas. You deserve action, and action is what I've already been delivering over these past 10 years as a community organizer. Everything from leading the effort to start the North Beach Farmers Market, to working with our community centers like Tel High and Cameron House, to most recently, leading the community charge to bring a grocery outlet to the old Safeway on Bay Street. That's the work I've done. That's the work I want to continue. Over this campaign, I've had the absolute privilege of knocking on thousands of doors and having thousands of conversations with all of you. And one thing is clear. We want change, and we deserve change. I want you to remember that change doesn't come from those who are backed by the incumbents or backed by the insiders. I love District 3. I love our neighborhoods, and I see them as what they are. Incredible communities, not as political opportunities to be used as a stepping stone. I want to work with all of you to make District 3 safer, cleaner, more affordable, and I want to reshape City Hall to get results. That's what you deserve. That's what we all deserve. I hope to earn your vote as the next District 3 supervisor. Thank you.